So everybody seems to be on a gluten-free diet or a vegan diet or a paleo diet these days. And it turns out that alternative grains are actually really good for our health. So I started doing some research a couple of years ago, and I found a great recipe for quinoa pizza that's really, really easy. And my kids absolutely love it. So you take about 1.5 cups of quinoa, and you're going to soak it for 8 hours. Just put it in your refrigerator overnight, and you can actually leave it in there for up to 2 or 3 days, and it's okay. So you soak it overnight, and then you're going to rinse the quinoa. And this helps to get that kind of grassy taste out of it, because quinoa is really delicious, but it definitely tastes more like a seed than a grain. So after you've rinsed the quinoa out, you started out with about 1.5 cups of dry quinoa, but now you have almost 3 cups of soaked quinoa. And you're going to add some water to that. About half as much water as the original quinoa that you started out with. So we started with 1.5 cups. So we're going to add 3/4 cup of water to this. And a teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of olive oil. And one of the great things about this recipe is that you don't have to use yeast, you don't have to knead it, you don't have to leave it to rise. You just blend it up, either with your stick blender or in a regular blender, until it's the consistency basically of pancake batter. So about a teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of olive oil. Then you can also add herbs to this if you want to. You can add a clove of garlic. Once you've got that all blended up, it's basically pancake batter. You let it sit for 1/2 hour before you make your pizza. So I like to spread olive oil on parchment paper for this rather than using a pizza tray. Then I don't have anything to clean when I'm done. Just roll up the parchment paper and drop it in the garbage. So we spread out the olive oil. And then the pizza, just pour it out. Now the thing about this dough is that you don't want to cook it in a really hot pizza oven. So you're just going to turn your oven on to about 150 Celsius, 160, or about 325 Fahrenheit. And cook it slowly. The first recipe that I found was a 400-degree oven, and it had a tendency to burn. So it's not going to have rolled edges like a regular pizza. It's going to be more of a flat bread pizza. Put it in here. And we're going to bake that for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to flip it over. So, by the magic of video, our pizza has been in the oven now for about 10 minutes. And the trick with quinoa pizza is that you want it to cook really well, but you don't want it to burn. So, I'm going to flip it over. Put another piece of cooking paper on top of the first one. Just give it a flip. And the first one peels right off. And it started to brown a little bit on the bottom there, which is great. We want it to keep browning, but not burn. So we put it back in the oven, and it's still on about 170 Celsius, which is about 350 Fahrenheit. We're going to give that about another 10 minutes. You have to keep an eye on it, and then we'll put on our sauce and our cheese. So every time I make quinoa pizza in my oven, it takes a little bit more, a little bit less time to get it right where I want it. But you really do have to keep an eye on it because it cooks slowly, but you will get a nice sort of crispy edge around it if you're patient. So the first 10 minutes at 170, then I flipped it over and put it back in for about another 15 minutes. Now we're going to put some sauce and cheese on it, and then it will bake at 400 until the cheese is nice and bubbly. And although it takes a little bit longer to bake than a frozen pizza would, it doesn't actually take much more work, because all you have to do is soak your quinoa and then add your water, salt, and olive oil, blend it up, and you can bake it while you're washing your dishes or working on your computer. And this is a pizza that you don't have to feel guilty about. So we like lots of cheese. Usually that's all we put on it. Although my daughter likes to put some fresh tomatoes and raw onions on hers when it comes out, and that's really good. So this is going to go back in now. And I'm going to turn the oven up to 200 Celsius, about 400 Fahrenheit, and we'll let that cheese get all nice and bubbly. So it's been about 7 minutes, more or less, but you want to keep an eye on it. And then it's really up to you how bubbly you want it to get. So we like our cheese nice and brown. Now before you cut it, which you can either do with a pizza cutter or with scissors, you want to let it sit for about 10 minutes. And then the pizza will be ready.